Okay, welcome back to Visionary New Earth Leaders. I am thrilled to have my new guest here today, Charley Johnson. And he has 20 years of experience in corporate as a business and as a business owner as well. And for the last 7 years in a non-profit as the president of the Pay It Forward Foundation, and also 10 years with an enlightened teacher. So he has a lot to bring in terms of consciousness, and we're going to have a deep conversation, I hope, about all the exciting things that we can talk about that we have in common, and maybe he can also teach me something, which I'm also excited to. So I'm going to hand over to you and let you introduce yourself and in your own words, and then we can start.
Okay. Born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. Um, I always like to give the background that Utah is a very religious place, very Mormon, right?
Mm.
I was not. It wasn't that we were atheist or Catholic or Buddhist or Muslim. I had very unique parents. It just wasn't a part of our awareness. It wasn't that we were for it. It wasn't that we were against it. It just wasn't something we did on Sundays. It wasn't something we were a part of our life.
Mm.
And I always give that as a context because that's kind of what really opened me up and led me to the chief consciousness officer position.
Mm.
I didn't do well with kids my age. I was offered a job at 16. I jumped at the chance because I loved being around adults. I don't know why I loved being around adults. And
Mm.
especially in a business setting because I could just sit in the executive's office or the CEO's office and just learn.
Mm.
And that's one thing I noticed when I was a kid. I wasn't good around kids because I was always observing. I was always learning. I was always wanting to get to know people. And
Yeah.
it didn't come across the right way to kids, I guess. But as an adult, I loved being around them. I loved learning. I loved being the most ignorant person in the room to just absorb.
Mm.
Business did well. We took off. The CEO that saw something in me very early. She passed away quite early in the setting. It was only a few years later.
Mm.
Myself and another individual took over the company after she passed. She passed on a Saturday. We took over on a Monday, and we were blissfully ignorant to what we had to do. We were early 20s. We had 150 employees and a bunch of adults with kids wondering if we knew what we'd be able to do. Um, Again, blissfully ignorant is an incredible thing to be because we had no clue what was needed. We just did a bunch of stuff and it worked out.
Yeah.
So I flew 2 million miles during that time. And then I developed a fear of flying inside that business.
Mm.
This was my first understanding of how the universe works because if it wants you somewhere else and you don't want to go, it's going to do everything it can to
Mm.
get you out of there.
Mm.
And that was that 2 million miles. And then all of a sudden, I wouldn't get on a plane to save my life.
Wow.
After I finally left the business, it finally got to the point where because I was the face and I was out traveling and sales, marketing, all that, I, I had to leave. A month later, I was on a plane to Europe. So it had nothing to do with the fear of flying. I jumped straight from a for-profit world to the nonprofit world with the Pay It Forward Foundation, the one with the book and the movie.
Mm.
That was interesting, traveling around the world and getting tens of millions of people involved with that. But during that time, and this is where it all comes full circle, I assume like yourself and your listeners, we've all done some type of self-development.
Yes.
Tony Robbins looked for a coach, looked for someone to find our blind spots. I did the same. Um, what was unique though is they all said they couldn't help me because we would start off like any relationship. You put your best foot forward on both sides because you want to keep going.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started asking the questions I was interested in, they just drew a blank. Luckily, one of them finally said, "I can't help you. You need a teacher. You're looking for something deeper."
Mm.
And again, the telling you about my past with the Utah and not having any religious or spiritual background, I didn't understand anything these people were saying. I didn't understand anything religious. I didn't know what the spiritual path was. I didn't understand what she meant by deeper questions. I was just being me, and no one had ever pointed out anything different.
Mm.
So she said something about a teacher, and I had no clue where to go. So luckily, the universe again stepped in and had me cross paths with some 85-year-old dude in the sauna who was ass naked and came up to me. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I feel like I've known you from a past life. That was early 30s. So something
Yeah.
in that frame of reference broke open the dam
Hmm.
because he was the first guy I looked at and said, no clue what you just said, but please tell me, what does that mean? Well, first of all, I told him to sit down because I was sitting down and he was standing up and naked. So you can understand where I was looking at. Um, he had me read. He was telling me a bunch of stuff he couldn't tell his own family because he was super Mormon, so his family wouldn't listen to him. It was very high level stuff, reading books, meditation, all that. I met an individual that he had me help with meditation, and then I met the teacher I spent the decade with. When I met him, I had a picture of Steve Jobs on my phone because I was just done with Walter Isaacson's book. I was just out of business, put a dent in the universe. I really like Steve Jobs and just everything he was doing. When I met my current teacher, he was a spitting image of Steve Jobs. I wasn't looking for Steve Jobs. I was looking for this guy. And for the first time in my life, I looked at him. I said, whatever you need me to do, I'll do. Again, I had no frame of reference. I had no understanding of the student teacher relationship, how to learn, all this stuff. But he had me read every book I could possibly get my hands on of any religion. He had me read books very few people on this planet read, and some other high level stuff, not to fill my already full head. As we both know, our minds are already full,
Sure.
constricted, 80,000 thoughts a day, overwhelmed. He had me read that stuff for me to get to the point where I understood myself that it's all coming from the same source.
Mm.
He was stripping everything away.
Mm.
So there's teachers that fill your head and give you knowledge, and then there's teachers that strip it away so that you can see things clearly.
Mm.
Drastically different things. For me to cross his path again had nothing to do with me. I
Mm.
had nothing. Most people who cross his path end up leaving the world behind
Mm.
because he is stripping everything away. You are seeing things incredibly
Mm.
clearly. So
Is he still alive?
he is.
Wow.
Yeah, still alive. And he can do
Amazing.
things that defy the laws of physics. Like
Mm.
the stuff that people think are magic or they only see in movies. It came from somewhere. It came from a thought. It's real. All sci-fi is real.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, no, I know. I'm well out there in my own
I
spaceship.
love that. I love that. I mean, truly, it all starts as a thought. We'll talk about consciousness in a sec.
Right.
Anyways, usually you cross his path, you kind of just money's for the bird. I don't want capitalism anymore. I'm just going to go do something else. I'm going to go find my purpose, whatever that is.
Mm.
For some reason, the world kept me embodied in this human form, kept this passion inside of me, and
Mm.
said, you need to combine these three,
Mhm.
which leads to the chief consciousness, the business background, the nonprofit, and then the time with an incredibly enlightened teacher.
Mm.
Instead of separating those worlds,
Yeah,
we bridged
absolutely.
them together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I always call that embodied leadership, really, because
Hmm.
you're really becoming, it's like you're the vessel of the source energy or source force coming through you.
Hmm.
And you have your own unique, coding and blueprint that you're here to deliver in service.
Yes.
And then expanding your own fields and becoming that person on a human level that or blend the ego with the higher self, because we need the ego, then becomes embodied leadership, really, because that's be leading from your energy, not from your head
Hmm.
and not from your heart only, just combined, right?
Yes.
So I think that's just my words, but I think that's how I understood what you just said.
Well, yeah, you said it perfectly because of the combination. Because right now, usually if religion doesn't give you what you want, you become super spiritual, right?
Mm.
You go from one extreme to the next.
Yeah.
In conscious leadership and a lot of stuff people are talking about, they're completely disregarding the mind and going nothing but the heart. You have to
Mm.
lead by the heart. Now, you're taking the vast majority of people on this planet who are not ready for that, cramming them a square peg into a round hole and saying lead from the heart. You can't do that.
You can't, no, exactly, especially if they've been in their head the whole time.
You can't. Yeah.
Like most people, it
Yeah.
is really an unraveling process. And this is why, like you said, you have your teacher. I've had my teachers. I'm also like people's teachers and,
Hmm.
mentor for them because of the
Yes.
spiritual, work. But definitely, and it is like an unraveling process. It's like a slow. It's not slow always. Sometimes feels fast, and then sometimes
Hmm.
it feels really stuck. But I think it's just an unraveling process that goes on. For your entire life. There isn't really like an end goal. The
No.
goal is to stay on the path. That
Yeah.
I'd say, but maybe you want to add to that.
No, no, no. A lot of people, we've got this construct of spirituality that enlightenment is the end. Like we
Yeah,
understand what that truly means.
yeah,
We only hear what we want to hear. And when we're listening to our teachers, we hear the bliss and the peace.
yeah,
Enlightenment's just the beginning, in a sense,
exactly.
right? It's a constant unfolding, and there's so many different levels of consciousness on this planet.
Absolutely.
The best way to look at it is second grade. You're not going into junior high next year, right? If you put a second grader
They're
in
all
high
in
school,
play school. Humanity is still in
yeah,
play school. Yeah,
it really is, and
yeah.
that's not an insult. And I know a lot of
No, no.
people
I mean, like in a sort of like we've got to support them, right?
truly, yeah, we don't get mad at an 8-year-old for being in second grade, and
No,
a 16-year-old being 10th grade is not better than the 8-year-old. Just
exactly.
different parts of the path.
Yeah.
But you can't, back to the heart and separating everything out,
Mhm.
you cannot put a second grader into high school. The kid's not going to be able to drive. He doesn't want a girlfriend. Like
Exactly.
it's going to be an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you said, it's a constant unfolding. It takes
Yeah,
time. You got to go 8, you got to go 9, you got to go 10, you got to go
yeah,
11.
yeah. And I think it always, I believe that the right people will come to you when you're ready. So obviously your teacher came at that time and it was, really amazing for you.
Hmm.
And I think that if, I'm just thinking of the people listening now to the show, that if you just keep curious and open, the right person, because you don't do it on your own, you're always with other people, like, you're not on your
Hmm.
own all the time. I think it's important to stay curious and to go, oh,
Yes.
I am open for learning. I want to learn more. I want to, I want to maybe have a mentor or somebody. I'm curious. And I think that will then help them to get that first, even if it's in the beginning of their journey or mid journey, because I think we do upgrade and then we do need different levels of support.
Yes.
So yeah, anyone feeling the calling, call it in, basically. Call your
Sure.
mentor in. I mean, did you
Yeah.
call it in a way? Because
No, no. See, that's the thing about this path is we read stories of individuals and thinking that's how it's going to unfold. Luckily for me, I didn't understand what the path was. because
no.
because I know how a human works and I know how this divided tool works. If I
Mm,
had read about this stuff before meeting my teacher and before meeting the 85-year-old
mm,
man,
mm.
I will guarantee I would have taken full control and I would have ruined it. I would have screwed it up.
Dismissed. You would have dismissed it.
Oh, I would have dismissed it or I would have said it's
Destroyed
got to be this
it.
way. I
Yeah.
I read a story about this guy and I was on a park bench like Eckhart Tolle and I'm just going to sit on a park bench
Mm,
and wait for the this massive realization.
mm.
Nothing about most of these stories happened to me.
No,
Mine
of
was
course.
so subtle. I
Yeah.
could meditate for 4 or 5 straight hours and just be gone. I never saw anything. I never
Mm,
felt anything. Mine were just subtle, very like,
mm.
oh, that's what he meant.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's what that is. Just subtle,
Yeah.
things. Even with everyone, the big thing is psychedelics. I realized when I did them just a few times, it was a typical Tuesday for me.
Wow.
My conversations didn't change. I didn't have visuals. I was asking deep questions. And I
Mm,
realized, what in the like really? Like
mm,
what am I doing? But
mm,
my path has been drastically different than anything I've ever read or an expectation that I built. Because when I met my teacher,
mm.
I asked him for truth, not relative, not mine, not the
Sure.
individual 8 billion truths that's creating division and conflict on this planet.
Mm,
Truth. And
mm,
he's like, are you sure about that, buddy? I'm like, yeah. And for years, he kept asking, are you sure
mm,
you want to keep going?
mm, mm.
Yeah, truth is not what people think it
Mm,
is. It really is
no,
not.
no, and also we are our own individual, like I said earlier, blueprint. We all have our own individual s- journey and path, and
Hmm.
it integrates with other people. We have our soul family, and we meet different people.
Yes.
It is, it is really a journey. I mean, human life here is extraordinary,
Mm.
and I think a lot of people talking, about consciousness, enlightenment, ascension, all those things I've come back to the fact that if we can create a magical human life here on Earth, because Earth is magical, if you think of it, if we can create that here and actually live through the essence of through our body, with all our senses, find true joy, deep fulfillment, happiness from deep reflection, as well as
Mhm.
integrating yourself into the
Yes.
life that you live in the 3D reality. Well, that is heaven on earth. I mean, look, that is it. Less, the least, we all have a bit of suffering, but if we can find that joy on a daily basis, that is to me actually enlightenment in a way, living here. Because how
That's it.
can, otherwise
That's
we're
it.
chasing something all the time, or looking back.
That's
Why
it.
did I do it that way? No, now, presence.
Well, that's it. Because if you're a curious individual and you're logical and you're okay being open to all these practices, modalities, and everything else, and you're listening to theories on aliens, you're listening to theories on near-death experiences, you're listening to teachers, you're listening to very simple stuff like meditation, you start piecing all that together, and the near-death
Mm,
experience, we had what we think we want in this human form on the other side. And
mm,
apparently we got bored and came here to understand what we are not with limits. Because
yes.
we are having, statistically, they say 2 to 3, 4% of the entire world has that's hundreds of millions of people who've had a near death experience.
Yeah.
Basically, every one of them says the same damn thing.
Mm.
Everything we seek in this physical form, we had. And it's like being 70 years old, retired and golfing every day and talking to the same friends. You're like, I gotta go jump out of a plane or something. This is ridiculous. I'm bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
But we had that.
Yes.
And we purposely came here to get our teeth kicked in. And sometimes I still want to, I can't wait to talk to my soul and say, you really signed the contract for this shit? You
Did you
you
really sign me
chose
up for
this.
this?
You chose this on purpose. Like, are you out of your mind? Because that makes sense. But the enlightenment, the end, the peace, the bliss, if you listen to a teacher really succinctly, correctly, and you hear what they're really saying,
Mm, mm, mm.
they still suffer. They still
Yeah.
it's not that they know everything, it's they're okay not knowing anything, and they
Yeah.
find peace in that, but they still have bad days. They still it's
Of
not what
course.
people think. And the mood making in the spiritual realm and the spiritual communities is incredibly unhealthy. It's the same thing that
And they're
religion
very
does. It's the same.
toxic, some
Oh
of
my God.
those. Like, I'm so not in them.
Oh.
I'm so doing me. Do you know what I mean? I'm
Well,
doing me.
and I like the shift in planets because the last
Yeah.
20 years is a lot of spiritual
Oh,
bypassing, a lot of spiritual
God.
materialism. And this new realm that we're moving into is inward, right? We're not
Inward.
looking for an authority. We're not looking for a
Mm,
third party. We're not looking for a teacher,
yeah.
which we still can cross paths with. But this is an internal thing. And that's why there's so much chaos because all that suppressed stuff is coming up.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just like the ego getting confused. Okay. So, I want these. Yes, we can have all the material things as well as being spiritual. Really? Yes, we can. But then that goes out of balance a bit sometimes. And then, this. But I think sometimes, well, not sometimes, always, there has to be chaos before order anyway. So
Yes.
everyone has to have a bit of an internal chaos at their own level, what's meant for them, in order
Hmm.
to come into some sort of balance. And that again, we all have an individual journey. But what I want to know more about, I'm really curious about like your mission in from depth, because obviously you come from the background you just described, but what is it that's pulling you now, like forward, to go deeper with that? Is there just a calling, is there in your heart? Like what is it? How would you describe it?
So here's the unique thing. Yeah,
Mm,
we're continuously talking about a calling or a purpose or
mm,
where I'm being led to. When you talked earlier about not escaping this realm, you talked about embodying. That's what the universe, like that fear of flying. The universe, for
mm,
me specifically, has
mm,
brought me so heavily and aggressively back into this physical form
mm.
that what's driving me right now is how do I support my family?
Yes.
How unspiritual is that for the spiritual path seekers?
That's not unspiritual
Truly,
at
I
all. That
know.
is very
No,
spiritual.
I completely this has forced me to be human, forced me to figure out, put
Mm,
me through stress, like money, like It is. I've never had anything like this in my entire existence. So
Mm,
what drives me now is the next logical thing that came to my mind was the chief consciousness officer to
yeah.
bridge the gap between all the division and conflict within the world, but
Mm,
specifically within business employees and executives.
exactly.
All the executives go off and do a 10-day silent retreat or an ayahuasca journey and come back and try to force that upon the employees. That never works. Um,
That's not working. It's a slow integral part, like integrative
yeah.
process that changes organizations over time. That's how I think.
Well, and think
Um,
about my question in regards to wellness programs, which this new position has nothing to do with, which everyone
mm,
thinks it does. It doesn't.
mm,
For the last 20 years, we have done wellness programs.
right.
We've
Yeah.
never been more divided and conflicted.
Really.
Well, think about all the division and conflict within business and outside of business, right? We've done
Mm,
all of these wellness programs. We have 10,000 books on trying to be happy. We have all the coaches, like we've never been more divided and conflicted. So these wellness programs will come in, which I'm in agreement with because of
mm.
the heart behind them, what they're doing.
Well, the intention, if it's
The
clean,
intention's great. The
yeah,
intention's great.
yeah.
But you've got in the West, you got a lot of Christians, a lot of atheists, and a lot of Baptists. And these wellness programs come in and say you need to meditate and be mindful. They immediately go to Buddhism and they're turned off by it, almost
Oh,
offended
I
by it.
see. Yeah, of course. So there's a
The,
cultural
the
and religious
participation,
conflicting beliefs. So the values, oh, I see. So it has to be decluttered.
you have to have someone on staff such as myself who's neutral, who understands both
Yes.
worlds, and can talk to everyone at every level of the company and say, this has
Yeah.
nothing to do with Buddhism. This has just a practice. Jesus did that. Like someone who is neutral.
In
That's the
fact,
big key.
the
Go ahead.
Bible, sorry to interrupt, just say the Bible used to have meditation as a
100%.
part of their Christianity used to have
Yes.
meditation as a part of the practice. I don't know where it was lost, but it was apparently.
True. Exactly. And the really big part of this position is the neutrality. And
Yeah.
my question always is, do you know anyone who's neutral? And very few people do.
Yeah.
Imagine the power within an organization to have someone who is not for anyone or against anyone,
Mm,
who reports to the CEO but has no authority over any other division, who
exactly.
becomes a secret weapon for every employee within the organization to simply be
Exactly.
curious, to open their awareness from here,
But it's
to
like a
ask.
glue. It's like a glue because you can
Yes.
be like this glue where I suppose people could still project their own disbeliefs
Hmm.
about neutrality, but that's their stuff, obviously.
That's fine. Yep.
But on paper and internally, you are neutral. So that's amazing because I think that's what's needed actually, because then you're sort of cutting through the nonsense and not it's not based on religion, it's not based on so society values as such is
Hmm.
based on deeper sort of reflection of the human nature,
Truly.
it's yeah,
Truly, the neutrality is a big deal. And
yeah,
as we always talk about, it's all energy.
yes,
Even people who are non-religious, non-spiritual, non-science, everyone knows it's energy. So when I come to them in my neutral stance and I
mm,
ask them a question, a pure curiosity question about how they got to somewhere, how they got to a view or a belief,
mm,
they can feel that I am not for them or against them, and they open up.
exactly.
So the division and conflict within an organization when their boss comes to them, and I know they don't talk about religion and politics, but everyone within an organization, if you're there long enough, you know where everyone stands.
You will understand after a while, won't you?
You will
No,
know, you will
yeah,
know
yeah,
what their beliefs are, who they
yeah.
hate, who they don't. So when they come to you and they ask a question, you immediately put a wall up. When
Mm,
HR comes to you and says, "Hey, nothing's wrong," you immediately put a wall up. There's always walls, so we're always restricted. Imagine having someone on
mm,
staff who opens up, removes the walls,
mm,
opens everything,
yeah,
removes the division and conflict, takes everyone from customer service to the C-suite from here to here,
mm, yeah.
gives them access to consciousness, not this middleman divided tool that causes all the issues.
Exactly, but it's looking, it's really looking beyond the limitations because beliefs, values, and sort of doctrines, I don't know, like how you compartmentalize things and everything causes a lot of limitation,
Oh
really.
yeah,
and if we can just say, look, don't worry about the boxing, boxing in, just look
Hmm.
at it from this neutral, perspective. I think that's a really great way of doing it. So tell me more about how that works where you are. Like, do you go out to different organizations or do you stay in the one you're in? Like what's the role?
So right
Explain
now,
more. Yeah, explain
right
more about the
now,
role. Yeah.
it's only been 6 weeks.
Oh, okay. That's good.
But here's the most interesting thing. I've
Mm.
done close to 60 podcasts in the last 4 weeks.
Wow.
So the attention for this position is skyrocketing. And the most interesting thing about to show you how things are shifting on this planet, how quickly
Mm.
time is dissolving. Most podcast hosts, when we do a pre-interview, admit they would have never had me on as soon as 3 months ago. But
Really?
something in them says, like, something's changing, something's different. This position,
Yeah.
I heard about consciousness on 60 Minutes. I heard more, but they're starting. This is the next logical position. On top of that, it's 10 times more important than when business was taken over by technology and we started hiring CTOs,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Everyone in the organization knew technology was a big deal, but no one could put up a website. No one understood coding. No one understood a URL. So they hired someone. People are starting to understand this is the problem. They
Yeah.
need to go to the source in consciousness. They've
Hmm.
heard of consciousness. They don't know what it is. They know it's the future. They know it's going to be the central focus of humanity moving forward very quickly. Oh, maybe we need someone on staff who understands that. And then on top of that, they're going to find out the individual is neutral.
Yes.
They can help anyone in the organization. If the executives go off and do some type of spiritual thing and they don't have access to that teacher again, they can have someone who can ask them questions. They
Mm.
can help the CEO with strategy. They can help the marketing team with better ideas because they're all their ideas came from here. It's
Yes.
going to open here,
Yeah.
right? It's it's the next logical hire.
Absolutely.
And oh,
100%.
absolutely.
I could do that job very easily
There's
as
there's
well.
that's the other thing is I've had a lot of
Definitely. I
people.
mean, I work for myself, but yeah, if there was a role, I could do that job easily. Yeah.
That's what I want. I don't want to go somewhere for a couple weeks or a couple or a month. I want this to be ingrained. I want this to be a position
Mm.
that's there that understands the fears, the worries, and the insecurities, the intimate times at the watering hole when customer
Mm.
service opens up about Ed and Susie fighting. I
Mm.
don't want it to be what we've done the last 20 years where someone comes in and then leaves. This position needs to be like the CEO, needs to be like a C-suite, needs to be their day in and day out with the little tiny
Mm.
subtle shifts by just being in the room,
Yes.
being in the meetings, opening things up
I love
right
this.
now.
I'm thinking now when I'm talking to you like this, because at the back of my mind, I have always been thinking of creating education for people being able to um, deliver similar insights that I do. But I haven't ever trained anyone to do what I do because I have picked up all the training along my way. I'm unique in my own way, right?
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
for sure, there must be a possibility for a training program to become a consciousness chief officer, like at some level. Because
Yes.
obviously you've had years and years and years and years of embodiment, and so have I. So it's not going to be a quick education, but I'm sure there's going to be something like that formalizing. Because how do you get that education? Do you know what I mean? Because they're going to say,
Yeah.
I can
Well,
see that you're qualified, Charlie, because clearly you've done so much, and I can see here on all the things that you've completed. But will there be a possibility for someone else to do that job if you resign? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So
I
it, it,
I think
it
it's there.
it's
I
there,
think
isn't it?
I've had hundreds of people in the past month cross my path and say this is my dream job, right? So I
Wow.
think
Yeah.
what it would be is it would be kind of like what I did with my teacher. It would be an unlearning because I
Mm,
want them to have a business background.
mm.
I don't want them to be super spiritual where they're against capitalism and they think they're going to come in and have everyone meditate.
No, it's
We've
too,
tried that.
yeah,
We've yeah, companies have tried that. It doesn't work.
doesn't work.
It needs to be a very unique individual who can bridge the gap between the worlds,
Hmm.
who has neutrality.
Mm.
So for the certification, I was talking to someone yesterday and she mentioned, which I thought was a great idea. And this is what I'm hoping for. Imagine having this as part of the MBA program. Imagine having this
Yeah.
part of the universities. This is taught like a leadership course, right? There's a
Yeah.
marketing course, there's a CEO course, there's a
Hmm.
management course. a consciousness course, a chief
Mhm.
conscious. That's where I see this going. And this is kind of pioneering this position, but individuals like you are luckily giving this more exposure, getting it out to your viewers, more people who are in
Absolutely.
business, more leaderships, just so it kind of sinks in because I really cannot think of anything more crucial right now with the shift of consciousness on this planet than
Exactly.
having someone on staff who understands what the hell that means.
Yeah.
I
And you
really can't.
know, I couldn't agree with you more. So I'm going to share a little bit of my own story here. And I think some of my listeners don't even know about this yet. And I'm not going
Oh,
to share
perfect.
names, but what's happened is, so I shared this a little bit with you as well. So I started out as a therapist. I'm not going to go into my story big, but started out as a therapist, always have been a channel. So I've always channeled energy. I was psychic from a young age.
Hmm.
I went in to do therapy, a lot of counseling, all the psychological stuff. And then I did the body stuff, so massage, and went into did the sports massage and things like that, physio. Then I did all my healing qualifications and learning to read a soul contract and like body activations and
Hmm.
sort of spiritual technology almost,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Doing all that. And then now I am a part of a small company where I'm a consultant there.
Okay.
So I'm their I'm their consciousness officer.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but it's a small English, like small company. It's not like a massive one. But I
Sure.
am on their board, and we do. I have a say literally in everything, pretty much. That and
Perfect.
that and so I can see how this can develop like into a larger company, obviously.
Yes.
But I'm
Yes.
closely working with the CEO because without the CEO understanding and feeling and embodying and raising in consciousness and really sort of like breaking out, that person can only take the company as far as that person goes.
Yep.
And the more that person raising consciousness and like really, evolve in many ways, not evolve as superiorly or evolving, just evolving, so will the company and the staff, because I also work with the staff.
So think about this, and this brought up a perfect thought.
Magic is like, it's magic.
This brought up a perfect thought, and I wish I would have crossed your path before the other 50 podcasts because this needs to be. This is exactly it, and this perfect. These companies, they're doing okay. Some of them are doing great, right? But
Yeah.
like you said, the individual, the CEO, can only take the company so far.
Yes.
My thought immediately went to when people think consciousness or awakening or evolving, they think they're going to go to the top of the mountain. They're going to come back to the organization with this realization. They're going to try and force it down the company's throat, and no one's going to care, right? They feel like it's going to be too much and they're not going to
Too
want
much
to
of a
work
gap.
anymore. Yeah, no, and we talked about levels of consciousness. We're this position, what you're doing at that CEO, what more organizations need to do is realize that as we're helping the C-suite, we're taking them from eighth to ninth to 10th grade.
Yes.
And my question to CEOs have always been, if you had the option, would you rather have seventh graders or fifth graders as your employees? Well, obviously seventh graders, they're a little bit more intelligent. They can communicate. They're better self-serving. They can help themselves. So the CEO, the executive, the individuals, having someone like you on staff, having a chief consciousness officer is going to level them up and expand their potential. It's not going to awaken them at the top of the mountain. They're going to go meditate and get rid of their
No,
company.
no, no.
No, it's just this subtle,
Slowly,
subtle
slowly.
shift. It's going to expand their potential.
It
Truly, that's
that is
awesome because
truly how it should be. And do you know what I've noticed? So it's a small, it's not big, okay? So I come to the meetings, the energetic sort of upgrades happens automatically by just me being there. And it's really not about blowing my own trumpet. It's just how
no,
it
that's
is.
the way it is. That's the way
That's
it
the way
is.
it is.
Yep.
And now, with obviously solid documentations that I also deliver, because I'm like, right, this is the ideas, these are the things we discussed. This is so I'm also being like solid in my communication and the things that I believe we should move forward. That in itself then starts shifting these people, and they have to read it. They have to sort of like respond in a certain way to it. And
Hmm.
then slowly, slowly, it's aligning, aligning, aligning.
Yep.
It's brilliant. And it
Yep.
works really well because it's a small company. So I'm very excited about this because it shifts a little bit quicker than you'd think. If you look at somebody else, I don't know, 20 plus people, it's going to take a little bit longer because you can just do so much you may have three staff that you will do stuff with, and then you have
Yes.
three. It's not going to
Yep.
be everyone at the same time. It
Yeah.
has to be slowly but surely. But I can see this is absolutely the way forward. I can't believe we're having this conversation. I love it.
So think about what you just said, and that's exactly. NASA did a study where they followed 2,000 kids at the ages of
Oh,
4 and 5. 98% are considered genius. By the time those kids were adults, it was below 2%. So we take this vast resource of consciousness, everything physical and non-physical is consciousness. So we
yeah.
have here, as we get older, we're Republican, we're Catholic, we're this, right,
Mm,
wrong.
mm,
You talked about the box, right? So
box.
we get here. We're very restricted. We could be
Mm,
Harvard grad, 170 IQ, and we're going to be at odds with someone with the same education because they don't believe what we believe. We're very restricted.
very limited.
When you clear that, when you break this open and you have a full consciousness, you're neutral and you're clear, you come into the room with everything. So what you talked about is that's what I've always taught, just being in the meetings with C-suite executives, VPs, or even customer service.
Yes,
You are raising the level up. You are breaking down the walls just by being in there. You don't have to say a single thing.
exactly.
You have to say a single thing. And it reminds me of did you ever see the movie with William H. Macy called The Cooler?
It's quite old, right?
Like 2003?
Yeah, I think I
Do
have.
you remember all
Yeah.
they did? He was very low energy, and the casino would bring him to a really hot
Yeah.
table and just shut it down. So
Yes.
they'd be that craps table, and people be going nuts, making tons of money. They'd
Yeah.
bring him in. He'd just kind of just walk in, grab a drink, sit at the table, and the thing would just crap out.
Wow. Yeah.
It's all energy. So what is a chief consciousness officer? What are you doing when you're in the meeting? The
Breaking down
polar
the barriers.
opposite. You're
Yeah.
polar opposite.
Yes.
When they start to understand what that really means and that that is an absolute necessity and it's a possibility and it's real,
Yes.
every company's going to have one.
They
They're going to
need
need it.
one. They need one. And what I've realized as well with this position is that can be, depending on the size of the company, it can be a consultancy position as
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
because they're not going to be ingrained in every day-to-day task of everyone, because that's not the main focus. The main focus is really the bird's eye view, to be uh, present with the leaders and have maybe sort of like almost like pocket training. Like, it's not like you're training every staff every day. You have something for some of them at times that will sort of drip feed the consciousness in. So you could potentially be a consultant with this as well, especially if you work with smaller companies. If it's a large company, obviously needs somebody to be there all the time. So
Mhm.
that's what I figured out as well. I like the consultancy idea though, because then you can dip in to sort of have this overview, and it's almost like you are energizing the points,
Sure.
in the company where those people, like the CEO, the executive, maybe sales and marketing person, has to be sort of injected with this kind of
Sure.
like higher consciousness, and then you can move out and then do the next, right? That's
Yep.
how I look at it as well. So that's possible, but that's just my own, how it's coming to me in my head as I'm doing it.
No, it's both. It's both, right? It's
You
it's
could
can
do
be the
both.
consultancy.
It's not no
Perfect.
limitation to it, but
Yeah.
I think larger companies will have someone there the whole time, obviously,
Yeah,
because a
that's
lot
what
of
I want to look.
people.
I want to Trojan horse it in. I
Yeah,
want to be there day in and day out. I want to
yeah,
be there for the little conversations that a consultant would never hear. I want it to be a constant position where they're there
yes,
all the time, hanging
yeah,
out with the executives, hanging out with customer service, going
yeah,
to meetings, traveling with them,
yeah,
having the conversations, going to lunch, helping HR hire, helping marketing come up with new ideas because it's
yeah,
expanding their awareness. I
exactly.
want it to be more of more of a full-time position. I want to see what happens when
Yeah,
that
well, I
occurs.
think it's a lot of companies should make room for that position right now, especially
Agreed.
if they see. Do you know what I see as well? Energy. I don't know if you see energy, but I see energy. So I can see. So this is what happened. This is interesting. So my client then. So this person was my client on an individual level, and then we started working with a company as well. But I could see straight away when we had a conversation, straight away where the leaks and the gaps and the communications, everything were from a
Hmm.
very intuitive and psychic position, like, right?
Okay.
And I'm
Sure.
sure if you talk to someone, because you're connected to the consciousness field, you could call
Oh,
it
it's immediate.
intuition, or you could
It's
call
immediate. You realize how
yeah,
much time they're wasting the
do
questions
you
they
know what I
ask, and
mean?
you're
You
just
could
like,
probably
no.
tap into the truth because
Yep.
you've expanded your consciousness. So whether you want to call that channeling or psychic or intuitive or
Yeah.
gut
Yep.
feeling, there's lots
Yep.
of different words for it. But that is actually what happens. You can pinpoint, and this is something that maybe you should say to people like, I can pinpoint where the gaps are and where it's really not working very fast. I can see straight
Yes.
away where it's going to be. And therefore, we'll save time. We're not trying to overanalyze it and over rationalize anything. We're not following data. Well, look at data, but we're looking at where the true sort of what faults are right now that are not working, that are more critical. So it'll be like more critical, medium critical, less critical,
Hmm.
and just work through it. And I'm sure that's what you could do that as well. You
Well,
might use other
that's
words for it.
here's the unique part, and I chose that word very carefully. The unique part is we humans are so conditioned to 10 steps, to something taking a week or a month or 6 months to integrate,
Yes.
that if someone comes in, and this has happened to me time and time again, if I'm sitting inside a meeting and it's an hour long and I hear six executive ask the same question with different words and get a different answer, and they actually think something's getting done. I've been in many meetings where within the first 5 minutes, I say, I get it. What are we doing next? Because we don't need the other 55 minutes.
No.
We don't, right? So you and I completely understand that.
Exactly. I'm like, can we
We
leave now?
completely
In
understand that. But
action.
but the last company I was with, I finally realized, I'm like, if I'm the only one that sees something in the room, it doesn't matter because they can't see it. So I've had to figure out how to embody this,
Yes.
because when everyone needs their voice heard and they're used to, this is an hour long meeting, we need an hour, we may need two. No, it's been 7 minutes. I heard what you
We're
said.
fine.
I understand what Susie's going to say. I know what Ed's going to say. I know what Bill, I know you're all going to, it's right here. What do we do next? Because we don't need the other 55 minutes.
No.
That's a very difficult thing because there's a lot of egos involved. The
Yes.
executives want to be heard. They don't want to, they feel like they just lost authority. No, this is a very quick, time saving, efficient individual in your organization that's going to make you more profitable and more productive
Exactly.
because
And
you're
you
no
think
longer
five
wasting time.
hours, five people in that meeting, 5 hours of work.
Truly,
Get back to the desk.
truly, truly. But that's part of breaking down the, everyone's like, oh, that's perfect. I mean, we're grown adults. We should know that. You don't, because you all are so conditioned to that. Oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. That's what you talked about. I sat in a meeting with a guy who's taking on healthcare. He really thinks he can transform $3.7 trillion. And I love his vision. He sat down with six people in the room. They kept talking for 20 minutes. And I knew this was going to drag on for a couple hours
Wow.
and I just simply said, okay, hold on a sec. We have the franchise. We have the FT. We have this. He's on board. She's on board.
Mm.
And I won't say it. I said, what the are we doing for the next
Yeah.
hour? We have everything we need here. Why are we sitting back like we got another couple hours of figuring this out? This is it. This is what do we need to do next?
Yeah.
We just need to do this one thing, right? So why do we need to discuss this? And luckily the guy knew me. He's like, okay, yeah, that's true. And everyone else was just like, they feel like they weren't heard. But that's the
Right.
specific point.
Egos, isn't
What
it?
you're talking about is tapped in, psychic, seeing things like that is 100% real. What you're seeing, the
Well, you
energy,
do it all the time, probably. That's
and
how you do it.
and see, that's the thing, was trying to figure out a way to talk talk to them and bring that information to them at their level in a business construct, in a business sense. Because if you do say energy, or you do say psychic, or you do say it's channeled, because I've
Yeah.
spoken to a lot of channels and they know
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
incredible,
Well, you
right?
understand what I'm saying. We're talking
Yes,
about this show
100%.
today. It's fine.
100%. It just immediately shuts them off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's part of this
Using the
position
right
is just
words.
yes,
Yeah, I always
yes.
use like I can tap into, all of you as a collective group, and I can sense, I always say I can sense everyone's sort of like, position, and I get really great ideas. I always say I get really great ideas when I sit with the whole group,
Hmm.
and that I can then deliver what I feel should be the next step forward.
Yes.
And then it's like they feel like, oh, you're getting, ideas and from me.
Yeah. Open, because you're open. You're
But
seeing the whole
yeah, but I'm
story.
exactly, and I'm saying it in a way so that it's not like I'm superior, I'm psychic, I can see you all.
You let
Um,
them make the decision.
because then
Yep.
exactly, I mean, I can say that here on my own podcast show because I don't
Yep.
really care because I
Yep.
do say what I want.
Yep.
But that is actually what's happening. And this is another thing as well. It's the stigma attached to these words. I'm, psychic, channel, intuition. I'm happy to use gut instinct. I'm happy to use
Sure.
feeling, led by, sort of, yeah, well, led by instinct.
Hmm.
I'm happy to use those things. But I also, it would be good to decondition the
Yes.
humanity around these words because
Yes.
actually, they were in the old days, the psychic and the seers were
Normal.
sitting, did the thing and the healing,
Normal.
and it was normal, and then that was condemned and shamed. So that's why we have that in our consciousness that, oh, it might
Hmm.
be a bit dodgy, oh no,
Yep.
it might be a bit weird.
Yep.
So and then that we need to declutter that as well,
Yes.
because things is changing. We're all a bit psychic actually. So yeah, it's just the words.
It's
It's just
well,
words.
like 30 minutes ago when we were talking about originate
Origination, yeah.
origination
Origin.
of the my story of
Yes.
what my teacher had me do. It's all coming from the same source.
Yes.
Knowledge is structured in consciousness.
Yes.
Knowledge, everything you've ever known, everything you've ever thought, anything you've ever learned from a book, watched on a
Hmm.
video, listened to a podcast,
Hmm.
all of that knowledge came from the same source.
Yes.
Everything that you think is everything is metaphysical, or it's magical, or it's not real, or sci-fi, it's all coming from the same source. Every
Same
religion,
source.
every politic, every view, every belief, everything.
Mm,
There's nothing that's not possible.
exactly.
We put the words on something, and that's what scares the hell out of us. The
Yeah.
psychic, the channeling, the intuition, all that stuff. And the spiritual community has not done it any service because they've gone
No.
screaming over on the right as if they're
Yeah.
better, and they
Yeah.
use big words as if they're more intelligent than the religious people. It's
Yeah.
all the same thing. And if someone like yourself, myself, and others can normalize it,
Yeah.
can talk about very high level things in a very nonchalant, matter of fact way, like we're having a
Yeah.
discussion where it's not like turn, oh,
Well,
can
there's
we
no
talk
ego
about this?
attached to it. We're just
No,
using
none,
words. We've embodied a
none.
certain level of
Correct.
knowledge and consciousness,
Yep.
and we want to make a good change. It's just,
Yes.
it's like plain English. To me, I
Yes.
want to put it down to plain English.
Yes.
Also, one more question. I would talk to you for hours, but we're going to kind of bring it a little bit to an end.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you a question. If a person is listening to this right now, well, they will be listening. Um, what is it you would like to say to the listeners that comes to you right now in terms of this evolution? One good golden nugget that they can take away today.
Look into consciousness. Do your own research, just very simply.
Mm,
Google search it. Find out the theories on it. Because all consciousness is the wise fish swimming through the ocean, swimming by
mm,
two young fish and saying, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish say, "What's water?" That's consciousness.
yes.
Your listeners, you, me, we're swimming in it. We've always swam in it. That's what we are. That's where our knowledge comes from. That's where our ideas
Mm,
come from.
mm,
It's where our mind comes from. It's where our senses come from.
mm,
It's where the world, the planet, 8 billion, that's what you are, who you
mm,
are, what you have access to
mm,
all day. That is the source. This is the middle mind that causes all of the issues.
mm,
Just start to understand what it is because it
mm.
changes everything once you understand that. Just look into it. Just do your own research on consciousness.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Comes back to curiosity.
Yes.
Oh, come
Yes.
back to this. So, where can people find you?
I'll give you my LinkedIn. I like people to go to LinkedIn
Yeah.
because there's posts there. There's always an open conversation as to
Mm,
what this position is,
mm,
specifically what it's not. So these
mm.
executives and companies can see how important this hire is.
Of course, yeah, perfect, perfect. And that will also be in the show notes, by the way. So everyone
Yes. Thank you.
what listening to this, they'll have all the information as well. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
I'm looking forward to releasing this episode.
Yes. I can't
Thank
wait.
you. Thank you.